We're less than a day away from the biggest delegate day of the 2020 Democratic primary, Super Tuesday. 14 states, the territory of American Samoa, and Democrats living abroad will cast their ballots. With more than 1,300 delegates at stake, Tuesday's results will decide how 1/3 of the total delegates will be allocated. Let's bring in CBS News campaign reporters Musadiq Bidar and Adam Brewster. Musadiq is in San Francisco and Adam is in Irving, Texas, just outside Dallas. Welcome to both of you. All right, I want to start by getting a check on each of your states. CBS News released polls of Texas and California on Sunday before Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg dropped out. Musadiq, let's start with you. What does the race look like there in California?
Well, Elaine, Senator Sanders has been leading the polls in California for a while. His campaign has been here longer than any of the other campaigns, really embedded within communities across the state, trying to engage voters and get them to turn out. Now, Senator Sanders, who was here in California yesterday at a rally in San Jose, he claimed that whoever wins the state of California is going to end up becoming the Democratic nominee. There are more than 400 delegates at stake here. It's a big state, and it'll mean a lot for his campaign. Now, the other number I want to point out from our poll yesterday is that a majority of voters here said that they have a positive view of socialism. 57% said they have a positive view of it, compared to 45% who said they have a positive view of capitalism. And for Senator Sanders, the self-proclaimed democratic socialist, that's a good sign heading into Super Tuesday tomorrow.
That is such an interesting set of statistics. Well, Adam, what do we know about the state of the race where you are in Texas?
Senator Sanders also led our poll yesterday with about 30%, followed by former Vice President Joe Biden, Senator Elizabeth Warren, and then former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg. That socialism stat that Musadiq just referenced, more than half of likely Democratic Texas voters likely to vote in the Democratic primary here said they had favorable views of socialism as well. A little under 40% said they had favorable views of capitalism. Senator Sanders has led many of the Texas polls that have come out during February. Former Vice President Joe Biden had a commanding lead in this state, really until the page turned into California, or excuse me, until the calendar turned into 2020. He's certainly looking to shore up some of that. He has always had a strong base of support here. He spent his final day campaigning here before Super Tuesday events in Houston and Dallas. Of course, tonight, getting the endorsements of Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg here at rally in Dallas as he tries to shore up support and try to capitalize on some of the support that he's had here for a long time. Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg has outspent and really has a bigger presence than everyone else, and his campaign is hoping that that leads to a solid result tomorrow.
So, Adam, despite what you just laid out, at this point, many voters, though, in Texas and California may have cast their ballots for Buttigieg and Klobuchar, who both dropped out. So what do we know about the status of the early vote in Texas? And can voters change their ballot if they picked a candidate who dropped out?
So more than 1 million people have voted either in-person early voting or by mail in the Texas Democratic primary. Those votes are locked in. They have cast their ballots. I have spoke to a couple people last night in Dallas, right after Pete Buttigieg was supposed to be in Dallas last night for an event that was canceled as he suspended his campaign. I spoke to some people afterwards outside who said they had already voted for him and they were disappointed to see that he didn't go to Super Tuesday, but they were proud of the race that he ran and thought that he had a future in the Democratic Party. So those ballots are locked in Texas. We don't yet know how that breakdown is going. Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar in recent polls have been polling combined between 8 and 12% support in the state. So there's a potential good amount of votes up for grabs between those two candidates. I was out door knocking with a Joe Biden volunteer this weekend. Some of the people who we spoke to at the doors said they were still making up their minds and kind of looking at South Carolina, and mentioned Amy Klobuchar's name. Of course, now she is no longer on the ballot and is going to be backing the former vice president.
Interesting. Well, Musadiq, are those votes, those early votes, also final in California?
Elaine, yes, they are also final here in California. So far in early voting, more than 3.5 million people have already cast their ballots. About 10 million are expected to turn out in this year's election cycle. I've just been texting with the source who tells me, who's been gathering this data, who says that about 500,000 votes were cast for those candidates who've now dropped out. That would roughly be about 5% of total turnout. So it's not an insignificant number. There are a lot of votes who have already been cast for candidates who are no longer in the race. The other number I want to point out from our poll that came out yesterday is that 40% said that they have already made up their minds and they have voted for candidates, even though South Carolina was something that a lot of people were waiting for. 9% said that what happened in South Carolina will be a major factor in who they end up deciding to vote for. The other group that we're going to be keeping an eye on here in California are these so-called perfect voters, voters who have voted in the last 5 election cycles. They turn out in high numbers. In 2016, they were about 90% they turned out in 90%. In 2008, similar numbers. But this year so far, they've only turned out about 40%. So that means a large portion of them are going to be voting between today and tomorrow. And that's a group that could potentially make a difference for a candidate.
Well, Musadiq, both California and Texas have significant Latino populations, about a third of both states. We saw Bernie Sanders win big, rather, in Nevada, thanks largely to success with Latino voters there. Does that bode well for Sanders on Tuesday?
It does, absolutely. In California, about 30% of all eligible voters are Latino. Hispanics and Asian Americans are expected to make about 40% of all voters here in the state. And they are expected to turn out in record numbers this year. Senator Sanders, a reason for his popularity in the state is because of his support among young Latino voters. Their campaign has been making an extra effort to get them to turn out. And there was a new Univision poll out this morning, which shows him with a 27-point lead over the other candidates. 42% of Latino voters in California say they are going to vote for Senator Bernie Sanders. So because this is such a large portion of the population here, and Senator Sanders has been making a play for these voters, it seems to be going well for his campaign.
All right, Musadiq Bidar and Adam Brewster, thank you both. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine.